Welcome to Manshik Shakti Foundation, the course of Mind Sciences for students. If we are serious about students' mental health and if we want them to identify all the challenges that they face in their life, beat the dust, cope with stress, find out anxiety, depression, addiction, eating disorder, our toughest battle is dealing with stigma. The stigma is so prevalent in our society, and not only in the society in India, but it is all over the world. There is no country where people suffering from mental illness or mental disorders or mental health challenges are not affected by stigma. More than half people with mental illness do not receive help, and their disorders, often people avoid or delay seeking treatment due to concerns about being treated differently or fear of losing their job or livelihood. That's because stigma, prejudice and discrimination against people with mental illness is still very much a problem. Stigma, prejudice and discrimination against people with mental illness can be subtle, but it can be obvious. But no matter the magnitude, it can lead to harm. It can lead to violence. It can lead to suicide, refusal to eat, lack of self-care, physical deterioration, terminal illnesses, complication of physical disorders, and moreover, their non-participation in civil rights. The suffering of consequences due to denial, due to rights of property, rights of making decisions, rights of participation in families, in personal matters, marriages, relationship. There are a host of number of factors which operate because stigma prevails. Stigma is a reality. It cuts across all age group, educational qualifications, social ladder, socio-economic subgroups, and geographical conditions. Now imagine a child who is suffering from depression in class 9th, class 10th, and he goes for a treatment after prolonged suffering, and he is about to come back after treatment. What do you think? How schools entertain this student back into the system? Everybody remains subtle. Everybody remains conscious. There are very few helping hands which reach out to them. People therefore do not declare why were they absent from the school. This is that we had gone to the relative's place. Many people bring fake certificates of physical illness, of headache, backache, sprain, sports injury, so on and so forth. Parents participate in perpetuating stigma, families participate in perpetuating stigma, teachers, academicians in school, everybody becomes a partner in perpetuating the condition that stigma prevails. Nobody tries to deal with it. Nobody tries to educate others. And this is the problem. Our students are frightened of revealing their thought process because they are not sure whether they will be received in the same manner as they were treated till date. They are frightened of losing love, affection, respect, autonomy, and their position in the society. They are worried. We must understand their fears. People with mental illness are marginalized and discriminated. against in various ways, but understanding what that looks like and how to address and eradicate it can help. The fact on stigma, prejudice and discrimination often comes from lack of understanding. It arises from lack of understanding, lack of education, lack of access to those people who have suffered. Believe me, once you meet somebody who has undergone a treatment and improved, your entire understanding about mental disorders will change. We are confidently talking because last 40 years we have been living with them, treating them, entertaining them, being a part of their life. And we have seen change, new medications, new treatments, early intervention, suicide prevention, defeat depression, learning disability management, and so on and so forth. There is a host of advancement, but who cares? Who wants to know? Do teachers want to know in the school? Do the administrators have sufficient knowledge? Do they have any resource book, any library, any person identified in the school where someone can walk up to and discuss these issues? If we do not create a conducive atmosphere, problem of student suicide, student mental health will never be taken care of. So our first battle is to understand what stigma is and try to find ways and means to eradicate it. Many studies show that while the public may accept medical and genetic nature of mental health or mental illness, the need for treatment, many people still have negative view about mental illness. So this is the huge problem. It's a fact that number of advancements have taken place in understanding what a mental disorder is. Number of advancements have taken place in the way various medications are coming day in and day out and how they are helping individuals to improve better, to reintegrate into mainstream of life. A host of psychosocial treatment, employment support, educational support, how it helps. All these are research-driven facts, evidence-based. But to believe in this, you have to meet the person who has been benefited by such treatments. Now, one main problem is the concept of mental illness itself. We say that it arises from biological problems, social problems, psychological problem, and spiritual problems. So when I say biological problem, it means I am telling that if there is somebody in your genera who suffered from mental disorder, there are more chances for your children to suffer from the same or some other type of mental disorder, that it runs into family. Here exactly is the problem. People feel, when we tell them that it's a brain disease, they are more frightened about it because they feel that it is irreversible. It's not something which can be treated. So on one side, our medical model perpetuates the disbelief, and on the other side, the same biopsychosocial model is trying to convince the population that things will be better with the treatment and come forward and seek help. The inherent contradiction in the concepts, the inherent controversies in the theories and theorem and real life situations create more confusion. Let's put the story straight. Mental illness exists because everybody has a mind. Some people do develop problems. And these problems can be managed much better than they used to be managed 20 years back. More than 70–80% patients suffering from depression, schizophrenia, etc. become all right. They gain employment. They live normal life. They get married. They have children. These are the facts. And the second, we have no option. We have to do our best. Reach out to people and talk about it. The facts of mental health challenges and mental illness needs to be communicated directly in no uncertain terms. Stigma involves negative and discriminatory attitudes. Self-stigma refers to negative attitude including internalized shame that people with mental illness have about their own condition. Imagine the person who suffers a chronic mental disorder or an acute mental disorder, what he goes through in his mind, what he thinks about himself. He's shaky, uncertain. He doesn't know whether he will improve or he will not improve. As against a physical illness, if you have a fever or a tuberculosis or a cancer, you know that you will improve and what will happen to you. Socially, you are not going to suffer, your employment may not suffer, your position in your house will not suffer, but the same is not the condition with mental disorder. And therefore, responsibility on people, on families, on teachers, principals, and civil society is far greater to deal with when it comes to psychological sciences, when it comes to the challenges of psychological medicine. The responsibility is to do everything possible to create a positive message, positive communication, to tell the facts. And the facts are that people suffering from mental disorder improve as much as any other disorder. Why should there be shame? But these shame, guilt are imbibed into persona because of long drawn history of non-recovery of mental disorder. That's a huge challenge. And therefore I say that stigma is more systemic, involving policies of the government and private organizations that intentionally or unintentionally limit opportunities for people with mental illness. Example includes lower funding for mental illness research or fewer mental health services relative to other health care. Stigma not only directly affects individuals with mental disorder but also the loved ones who support them, often including their family members. Mental illness is especially an issue in some diverse racial and ethnic communities, and it can be a major barrier for people from those cultures accessing mental health services. If you go and see multi-ethnic society in Canada, in US and other countries, the stigma is much more rampant. People are more frightened revealing their conditions because they are worried about isolation, discrimination. How can we deal with it? We are talking about position of our students in universities who do not disclose that they have ideas of hopelessness or ideas of suicide, and suddenly they do something which is so detrimental to their own life. If they have a right education, a good education, correct message that yes, helplessness is a precursor of depression, depression is a treatable condition, things will change. And we have no other option but to pursue the path of mental health education at every level, for children, for adolescents, for adults in the universities, and for teachers. The training, education, workshops, discourse, dialogues, writings, essay competitions, paintings, public rallies, the many ways you can fight stigma. It's everybody's business. People with mental illness can influence perception of and stigma, and they have often been negative, inaccurate, or violent representation. Main issue about stigma has been because people are frightened that they will be isolated. They will not be treated same. And this discrimination exists now. Imagine if you are an employer and you have to appoint 2 employees and somebody comes who is bright enough but says, well, I had bipolar disorder in past 5 years, I am okay now. Would you be enterprising enough to employ him? Touch your heart. and ask yourself. We all are in the same boat. We are affected partly due to stigma. It must be eradicated, and therefore education is most important. If we cannot create conducive atmosphere to eradicate stigma, all this, the scientific advancement will go waste. It will not reach to the beneficiaries, those needy people who require. So therefore, schools, institutions, students, parents must join hands and design programs, disseminate message, be part of discourse that yes, positive mental health is for positive life. You can treat mental illness, you can prevent mental illness. Must have dose of mental health education right from the childhood.